everybody. Welcome to an evening with Robert here on GHTR, the nation's podcast radio. Tonight, I got a real special guest coming up here really quick, and he was on one of our other shows, Late Night with Rob and Chris, and he's an author, and he'll be coming up here in just a few seconds here. But I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, surfgrandhaven.com, Anthony's Kicked Up Catering, Joe's Wood Nickel downtown. It's going to actually be there at the Rosebud, the old Rosebud here in Grand Haven. Also want to thank Will Beaton for the snowball contest that he handed out prizes there last weekend. I was actually telling you guys about that. That was actually a pretty good day to go out there to the pier. We got kind of talking, and we're in 37 years. Lake Michigan is actually in 37 years it has never froze over except for this year. So that kind of tells you how much snow we had up here. So just rambling on here, I guess. But I've got a real special guest. This guy is, in my opinion, knowing the kind of books that he writes, and he's got a hell of an imagination, and but he's got some really good material. And I asked him to be on the show tonight so we could learn everything there is to learn about him. And his name's Tim Miller. So, Tim, how the hell you been? I forgot to tell him to turn on his mic.
I was trying to. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, it wasn't responding to my command here. Okay, yeah, I'm doing really good. Good to have. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. I mean, last time you were on, you were telling us about the books and that you had out in there. You like writing horror books, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and you do have imagination, that's for sure. I mean, you do put a lot of work into those. But, we're here tonight to learn about you, and a lot of people like it because they learn about the person, they learn where you come from, where you grew up, what was some of the things that happened in your life, whether it be, tragic or anything that happened. And so here's how we're going to work this. What I want you to do is I want you to just tell me everything there is to know about Tim Miller. Let's start where you were born. I mean, we don't have to go in day-by-day detail, but you know what I'm saying. But go ahead and introduce yourself to the world, man.
All right, well, let's see. I was born in Indiana, South Bend, Indiana, and that's where I grew up. But I grew up in a little town called Napanee. Had about 5,000 people at the time. Pretty quiet, decent childhood, nothing wild. I don't have any, abuse stories or anything like that. Parents were always got along, and, went on fishing trips with my dad. And I guess the worst part was me and my brother. He was 5 years older than me, so he would rough me up quite a bit, whatever chance that he got. But
you kind of got your butt kicked a lot, right?
Yeah, he liked to show off for his friends. I don't know how that was bragging. He was 15 and I was 10, and he beat me up and say, "Ha, look at me." So
did you ever have that point later on in life where you beat the crap out of him?
Never got the chance because he knocked up his girlfriend when I was about 13 or 14 and moved out.
I guess that was payback enough, right? So,
what's that?
That was payback enough then. I mean,
yeah.
So
we haven't talked in about 10 years or so. So I don't know. No matter to me.
It was that bad.
Well, it was mostly, I never had any really ill will towards him, but he just always thought he was better than everybody, and so he just eventually kind of stopped talking to me. So I wasn't going to bend over backwards to ask permission to wipe his butt for him. So.
Well, I kind of, I know how that feels. It's like you can reach your hand out there so many times, and they can cut it off so many times, and it just comes to the point where you just kind of like say, you know what? I've tried, but if you don't want to do this, hey, it was nice knowing you.
Well, that's what and I've always said, because, I've known some people who, they've had real toxic family members, and, I've always kind of said your family isn't necessarily your blood all the time either. Right, sometimes those are the worst people in your life. Your family is those people that care most about you, that are there for you. So,
right. Well, okay, let's continue on then. I mean, South Bend, Indiana. You didn't live. I don't know where you're at now, but actually, I live up here in Grand Haven, Michigan. So you're not too far from me, where you grew up.
Yeah, I'm in Texas now, but yeah, I grew up. We used to venture into Michigan from time to time, and I grew up, like you said, Napanee's about 45 minutes or so away from South Bend, but we went to South Bend a couple times, maybe once a month or so, because there's nothing in my town. And then, nothing really eventful really happened until after high school. I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, stationed in Camp Pendleton, California, and spent 4 years out there and did all sorts of wild things. Didn't fight in any wars. It was after Desert Storm, so there wasn't any wars happening. It was about 92 when I got in.
Okay.
That was kind of where I really started taking my writing more seriously, oddly enough.
So wait a minute. You said I took my writing a little bit more serious, but so that means were you writing earlier? I mean, when did you start first writing?
I mean, I don't remember exactly. It's kind of hard for me to remember when I wasn't, because when I was in school, our teachers would give us these little projects to do, little writing assignments, like, write a story about this or whatever. And that was one of the few things that I was always good at, that I always got good grades on. And sometimes I'd get like praise from the teacher about it, or she'd read my story in front of class or whatever. So like even in like elementary school. So,
right.
Like in junior high, I'd write like go to the library on the typewriter, and I'd write out little stories and make a bunch of copies and go to school and sell them for 10 cents or, something like that. Like little Indiana Jones stories or Friday the 13th stories or things like that.
So did you watch, like, in your earlier, in your younger years, did you watch a lot of horror movies and stuff like that growing up, or?
I did once I was about in junior high. In elementary school, oh gosh, I must have been maybe 9 or 10, maybe, if that. Yeah. I was about 9 or 10 years old. And Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, had just come out on VHS. My brother had brought it home with a bunch of his friends, and I sat there watching it with them. And I got through about the first scene when he kills that girl, that Tina, in their bed with her boyfriend in the first scene there. And I ran up to my room, and it scared the living crap out of me. And
I bet you didn't go to sleep, did you?
I slept on the floor of my parents' room for probably 3 or 4 months after that.
Are you kidding me?
I was horrified.
Oh,
well,
wow.
Just the concept of, you're 9 or 10 years old, and the idea that this guy's going to come and kill you in your sleep,
Oh, wow. That's kind of like me with back when I was little, The Birds. Remember the movie The Birds?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell, to this day, I'm still deathly afraid of birds. And it's only because I saw that movie. I was just like, wow, yeah.
Yeah, birds I think they kind of creep me out, too. I don't understand the love of birds some people have. But yeah, then somewhere along the line, I don't know, I think some of it might have been peer pressure.
Yeah.
Once I got to be around 12 or 13, and, you go to your friend's house, and they're like, hey, we're going to watch Friday the 13th. And, I'm kind of thinking, I don't know, I've been scared of that kind of stuff before, but it's like all your friends are there, and it's like, well, I'm not going to wuss out now. And
right,
you know what I mean? So you end up kind of sitting through it, and I don't know something at some point kind of switched. And I think it might have been a way to kind of conquer the fear of just sort of, embracing it, I guess. And, I started watching all the Friday the 13th movies and the Halloween movies, and then all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And,
what one was your favorite?
What's that?
What was your favorite?
Probably the original Halloween. That, I don't know why at the time.
With Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, that one was really. I don't know what it was about it. I loved it. I watched it over and over.
That was an intense movie, though.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for the time. I mean, now people look at it and they're like, "Oh, it seems boring," but there just wasn't anything really like that when it first came out, and even, in the mid '80s and stuff, that was still pretty creepy.
Yeah.
So, and then I was a little bit older because my parents were real religious. It wasn't until about, I think I was a freshman in high school when I first saw The Exorcist.
Oh, wow.
And then Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was actually hard to get a hold of in our town.
Really?
Yeah, the local video stores wouldn't carry it.
Now, that movie right there, I remember vividly. I remember one part about that movie, and I just completely, I've really never watched all the way to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because it's that part where he takes a sledgehammer and hits that guy on the head and drags him.
yeah.
I was like, holy hell. I was a little bit scared. So, I mean, so you started right around at an early age, kind of like getting into these horror flicks and stuff like that. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, around the same age, because I was always a reader. I always read a lot. I was always a good reader. Read kind of ahead of my age level. And it was right around the same time, around 7th, 8th grade, I started reading like Clive Barker and Stephen King and that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow. You like Stephen King?
Not as much anymore.
Yeah,
I kind of consider, and this is a knock on Stephen King or people that read him, I kind of consider him like what I call entry-level horror.
Oh, okay.
I say that because he's so popular. When someone says, I'm going to start reading horror, he's the first thing that they pick up. And, you know, and like I said, I'm not knocking him, because if it would be for him, a lot of us horror writers wouldn't have anybody, you know, come into it. So he's kind of created, you know, popularity for the genre. But, you know, he's kind of the first thing. And then, you know, after a while, you know, after you read a lot of his books, especially some, you know, once you get through his more classic stuff, some of it gets a little repetitive. Or
yeah, but do you really think he's really? I mean, to be honest with you, now I've read The Shining and I've read Cujo. Those are the actual two books I've only read, and let me ask you this. You know, seeing we're on this, and you're an author and stuff like that, I really didn't consider him as a not horror. I mean, it was scary movie maybe. I mean, or a scary book, but it never really like. I mean, like what was that one that was on TV? I can't.
The Stand.
Yeah. Now that one, that whole dang thing was amazing. I mean, just that alone, but it still to me wasn't a horror movie or a horror book. And then the other one, the one with those little things flying through the air, whatever that Langoloids or yeah. Again, it's not horror. That wasn't horror to me. Is, you know, Jason cutting off somebody's head, or, you know, taking a girl and chopping her up, or, you know, Michael Myers frickin' just killing everybody he can. You know, those are horror. So do you feel the same way about? I mean, is there a difference?
I think it's a really broad genre, and it's hard. You know, trying to categorize something into a particular genre can be tricky sometimes. You know, I know people that consider like Silence of the Lambs to be horror. Whereas when you look under, like, when you go to a bookstore and look for the book, it's under like thrillers and suspense or something like that.
Okay, there you go. That's what I was looking for. That's how I look at it. It's more of a thriller. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, it just depends on how you. I mean, because, you know, what might be. I mean, I've read some. I mean, good examples of the movie You're Next. That was an indie film, kind of a slasher home invasion type movie, and it starts off seeming pretty intense, and it actually, to me, gets really funny in the middle. I mean, there's some really goofy stuff, and I was watching it with a group of people that are, you know, into horror and stuff, and we're like laughing through the movie. Well, I'm at work talking about it to some other people, and they're like, "Oh, that movie scared the crap out of me. I couldn't sleep at all for the next 2 days."
What?
And I'm like, "Are you serious? I mean, that freaking scared you?" I mean, I had a lot of people, and I hear people still now tell me how scary and terrifying it was.
Right.
And I'm like, that was ridiculous. I mean, it was almost like at some point they realized that it wasn't working, so they're like, let's just make this funny.
Right.
And you know, and it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it, but yeah, it just got so silly at some point that it was fun to watch and sit through, but it wasn't scary to me. So to me, I guess you call it horror comedy, but some people are like, no, that was so scary. So that, so I guess anything that could be scary to anyone is.
Yeah, one of my fans, of course, it's our dear Brenda, told me, she goes, you need to read more. Okay, I do, because I do like good books, and I do miss that. I don't know what's happened. It seems like I think you just get in that click and you just stop reading. And I think the last book I ever read was Tom Clancy book, you know. which
Mm-hmm.
I think he's amazing in his stories. But anyway, let's get back to you. So you're growing up and you see all these horror films and stuff like that, and you're starting to, something's happening within you, obviously. And so you were talking about when you were like junior high or something like that, where you're starting to watch a little bit more horror films, or a little bit, maybe I might be off, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I was watching the horror films, and me and my friends would get Fangoria magazine and look at all the gory pictures and things like that. We watched a lot of the silly horror stuff that was out in the mid late '80s too, like Sorority House Massacre and what was the other one? April Fool's Day, and some of the other ones that were out at this time. So I go through high school, and that was just kind of my thing. And it started morphing too, like in my assignments, because school teacher, we'd read a book. What was it? We read a book in one of my English classes. I think I was a sophomore, and it was about Davy Crockett. I don't know why in Indiana we were reading about Davy Crockett, but we were, and it was in an English class. And so the teacher told us, okay, now you need to I want everybody to write a short story about Davy Crockett, and also use the name of your classmates in the story as well. And so everybody's writing these little frontier stories and all this other stuff. Mine was Davy Crockett got killed and then came back as a flesh-eating zombie and went throughout the story killing my classmates using various horrific means. I think I strangled one girl with her own intestines, cut somebody's head off, and so. Did
your parents get called into school on that one?
No, and see, this was the nice thing. This is where I was lucky growing up, because this was in like 1991, 92, or about 89, 90, around then.
Yeah.
There hadn't been school shootings and all that stuff. So I mean, now they would haul me away and lock me up somewhere, or
yeah,
something like that. But
yeah, you'd be definitely locked away on that one. Yeah, I'm gonna strangle this girl with her intestine. Teacher reads that. Oh, he's probably really gonna do it.
I got an A on the paper. I don't know if the teacher read the whole thing. She might have just read, because it wasn't really marked up at all. I'm guessing she might have read about a paragraph and was like, you know what, we're just, okay, we're good.
Yeah, she probably knows your track record, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, she knew how. I mean, it was a small school, so I mean, she knew me. I mean, she had me before in other classes, and my freshman year, and she'd see me around, and so I mean, I think she knew I wasn't going to really strangle people with their own intestines and such. So now they just get crazy. My stepdaughter got in trouble at her school last year because she was doodling and drawing a picture of a stick person, and it looked like he was holding a gun. So they took the picture and her to the principal's office, and she got written up for making a terroristic threat. And the principal's telling us that I was very scared when I saw this.
Oh my God!
I know. I was just like, "Are you?" Yeah, it was. I wanted to strangle somebody with their own intestines at that point, because I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" And if you see my stepdaughter, she looks about as dangerous as,
The principal literally said that this scared. Was this a guy or girl?
It was a woman. Yeah.
Oh, it scared her.
Yeah.
And they probably looked at you and said, "Yeah, you're the cause of this." No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but so yeah, it gets really goofy, and things are kind of So I almost kind of wonder what it would be like for kids that are into that kind of thing now. It's kind of weird. It almost seems like you think over the years people's tolerance would increase, but it's almost decreased. People get just at book events, I've gotten weird comments of people asking me, "Oh, so you're some kind of sociopath or something?" And
I would say, "Yeah, sure, whatever you want me to be." That'd be my deal right there. That'd definitely be my that would be my answer. It's like it seems like our kids today are labeled. I mean, my niece, she's I think she's like 12 years old, maybe 11 years old, and because she on Instagram, she had her hands doing like a crisscross in front of her chest, and they considered it a gang sign.
Yeah,
we don't have gangs where we live. But they just and guess what? They called in the police and had the police go to my brother's house and everything like that and check out his. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, yeah, well, I think we're all becoming wusses is what we're at. But anyway.
Well, it's crazy.
But, so, you wrote a horror in front of your teacher. You got an A. So that couldn't have been the last of it right there.
Well, no, yeah. So, I mean, that just kind of, the other students, I let everybody else read it. The other students, even the ones that got killed, thought it was funny. And this was what was funny, was some of them got upset that, hey, you killed her in a cooler way than you killed me.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, they're like, you just stabbed me, whereas this person, you cut off their head and put it on a stick. And, so that was kind of, it almost became a joke. Then when I'd write little stories on my own, people would ask me to kill them off in my stories and stuff. They would even tell me how they'd want to get killed, and so I'd write it out for them and everything.
Everybody wants to die a special way, I guess.
Yeah, and be immortalized on paper. So, yeah, did that in high school. And when I got into the Marine Corps, I kind of got away from writing for a while, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
First year or two, it's kind of a whirlwind. You're doing boot camp and all this training and stuff. And then once things settle down and once I got on deployment, like my third year in, you're on ship, so you have a lot of time on your hands.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did a lot of reading, and then I just had a notebook, and I would just sit down and write these really detailed, stories of just, once again, horror type stuff.
Right.
My platoon sergeant found it one time and read it, and no, it wasn't the platoon sergeant. It was my lieutenant that had found it and read it, and he was a new lieutenant to our unit. He was going to send me in for Section 8.
Really?
Fortunately for me, my squad leader, who had been my squad leader for... What's that?
No, I said really. I said, wow. Leave it to them.
Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, okay. I thought you said...
No,
yeah, Section 8 is a psychological evaluation.
Yeah, I know what it is.
So, yeah. But my section leader, who... he'd been my section leader he was my staff sergeant for about 2 years or so since I'd been with the unit. He talked him out of it. He's like, yeah, that's Miller. He does that. He's he's harmless. So, and once again, none of these were real life scenarios. I mean, they were just completely like made up, worlds and demons, and
they don't know that
people, and
they're thinking this guy's going to get out in the field and he's going to wipe everybody out. So,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just I guess, and maybe it's just different. I mean, it's hard for me to think how somebody else would think, but I guess the folks that aren't creative, or they're used to being, they've been in the military a long time, and you've had such a restrictive mindset. Somebody that comes along, like that, I won't say open-minded, but just sort of creative and just sort of kind of nutty, I guess, doesn't make any sense to them, and they can't wrap their brain around it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, everybody has their day, I guess. It's just like I said. But when you were in the military, you said that you just kind of got out of it until you were deployed out on a ship and stuff. And of course, you have plenty of time to do what you're doing. Of course. Now, The thing about it is there has to come a point where you just thought, I just want to start writing more. So when did that happen? I mean, did it happen just after this, or is this the time when you started knowing that you wanted to be a writer?
It was a few years after I had been out. Part of what was hindering me was just sort of technology at the time, and because computers still weren't really a thing, and the ones that were around were very extremely expensive. So,
yeah.
I had to borrow a typewriter from somebody or that kind of thing. And as you know, typewriters are a pain in the butt to have to use, and you make a mistake, and it's just whatever. So, after I got out, after a few years, I got married. I was with my first wife, and we just had a baby and stuff. I was working as a corrections officer, and I'd been playing around. We had just gotten a computer, and so I'd just been kind of playing around with some short stories and stuff. And I just decided I had a couple short stories published in some small magazines, which at the time was a big deal because, once again, it was when websites were super expensive. Not everybody had their own website or blog like they do now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd had some like online web magazines and some small print magazines that had actually published a few of my short stories. And so I decided to go and try to my hand in a novel. And my first one I'd written way back then, it's out of print now. And people have talked about bringing it back, and I just don't want to mess with it because I don't even have the files for it anymore. And it was more of I considered it like a mystery type book, but it was like a serial killer type. It was kind of very similar to sort of stuff that James Patterson used to write before he was a complete, what do you call it? Before he was doing his whole writing factory thing that he does now, but back when he was writing his own books and everything, it was kind of that style of story, and had some twists and turns and things like that. And I'd self-published that, which was harder to do at the time because you didn't have ebooks and it cost a lot of money. And I would just go around locally and did some book signings. Then I wrote a second book after that, which is also out of print, another similar style story. And I'd worked on some others, but then I just had some things happen. Because I think it was when we had the baby and things got tight financially, so I was working 2 jobs for a while. And then I left the sheriff's department and went back to school part-time. And so there was about a 10-year gap where, as far as fiction goes, I was hardly writing at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. I was going to school part-time and everything, and so I wrote for school, papers and things like that. And I actually this was kind of funny because we just had the baby and I was trying to, settle down and become a responsible person and all that. And I'd actually was going to school part-time. I was going to Bible college to become a minister.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I sort of drifted away from horror and,
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're getting interesting here. Now you were studying. Wanted to be a minister.
I'm sorry.
You wanted to be a minister.
Yeah, that's what I was studying for. Yeah.
Really? Now,
yeah.
how does
part
that fit
of
in?
it was due to a string of things that had happened.
What happened?
Hmm?
What made you?
It was hard to explain. It's just stuff that was within our marriage that first time around.
Mm-hmm.
And just a few other things. My parents had been real religious growing up, so they didn't like my horror habit anyway. I had been off and on growing up, but once I got out, once I got on my own, I didn't really think too much about it. But then I guess that's just kind of a direction I went to when I was going through some personal crises, with our marriage at the time, and my daughter was still real little, and I guess that was my way of coping with it and everything. And
right.
So I ended up I went to Bible college part-time, and then I was working in a psychiatric center. It was like a residential home for troubled kids. And so I was working there. And so during that time I was still writing, but like I said, it was mostly like papers for school and things like that. So,
okay, well, the thing about it is a lot of people, you'll probably get an idea here in just a minute of what I'm talking about, because you'll know exactly. It's just like when people go through a traumatic experience, or they're going through a rough, breakup of a marriage and stuff like that. They seem to get really spiritual. And actually, I'm not going to laugh at you, because being a minister, you kind of want to do something good, and you see good in it, So, and one of the things that I remember back when I was going through a rough time in my life, and it was just, personally, it was just like one of those deals that you just kind of have to take a deep breath, and if it hadn't been for God, I think I would have went a different route, and that's why I did what I did, and I studied biblical history, which is one of my most favorite things. I love biblical history. I know more about that Bible, and I know about the things that happened, and it kind of, you draw your own story, you kind of put 2 and 2 together. So for you to study to be a minister, it had to have been a time in your life where you were comfortable with doing that, though.
Yeah, I pretty much was. For me, I felt like that was kind of something, at least for that period of time, that held our family together.
Right.
And yeah, I felt like once things kind of got better at home, I felt like that was part of why going into doing the ministry thing was, I was like, well, we had this hard time going on and we got through it, so I want to help other people, in similar situations, and that, to me, that seemed like a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It took me I finished, but I didn't, because I graduated with an associate's degree. It took me about 4 years, because I was going part-time. So, like 1 or 2 nights a week. And that's when things got interesting, was after I graduated. Because, having done all that, because doing all those things, and I was helping out, volunteering at our church and other ministries and things like that. And I guess that's where kind of another change started to occur. And it was so bizarre because it was like I could feel it and I didn't know what to do with it. It's hard to describe. It's like suddenly sitting in church, everything just sounded like bullshit. It was like, I guess after a period of time, it's like, helping out and kind of working, in churches and things like that.
Right.
I guess it's like you've seen behind the curtain,
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of see what really goes on, and how a lot of those places are ran and how people treat each other. So that was one thing that had started to kind of become disheartening, was, I had been, really hurt and burned a few times, at a couple of churches, of just the backstabbing, and, you confide in somebody, something that you're dealing with, and that person goes and tells on you that, oh, he's sinning, just really stupid stuff. And it just gets really, it was just kind of a combination of that.
I
just
know.
My own thought.
I get you. I understand exactly where you're going with that one. And it becomes more of a kind of like a political deal. Oh, you're not doing anything right. Yeah, I'm doing everything I need to be doing right. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I got it.
Well, and it was also, I always tried hard not to be a resentful person. Because I was working at that one place, making, struggling just to get by. But yet I'd see some of these preachers at our churches that were, driving fancy cars and all that stuff, and telling that, oh, well, God will bless you one day for your hard work. Well, I'd like to feed my kid, you seem to be doing pretty good. You've got a Cadillac and a 3-story house and, all this other stuff. So something with that didn't seem right. And then I don't know, like I said, something just shifted in my own thought process, where I just decided to start I don't want to say thinking on my own, but I guess I was trying to think on. I never really was what I call a cookie cutter Christian during that time anyway. And that was maybe part of why I didn't get along as well, because I didn't go with the flow with just, do this just because the preacher said, because sometimes certain things didn't make sense to me with, how they treated certain people, or, people they deemed as, sinners or whatever. I was like, well, I don't think you're supposed to just go and yell at them. I think we should try to help these folks and, take care of these people and change their mind later. But just preaching at them's not going to fix anything. And they would call me a false prophet.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that made you feel good, didn't it?
Well, I was just like, okay. So I guess over time, I just kind of, I guess started, it was like I came out of this sort of whatever fog that I had been in during that time. And, I don't feel stupid for going through that time, because I believe it helped me, and I grew as a person, from having gone, from having done those things and gone through those things. But then, after graduation, within probably about a year or two after I got out of Bible college, I identified myself as agnostic, but the more I think back, I identify now as an atheist, and I guess it's kind of hair splitting on the terms, really. But I just I believe that it's possible that there's a higher being, but I don't believe in one. And if presented with evidence that there is one, then I could potentially believe that. But for what it is right now, I don't currently believe in, which people find shocking that I write horror, and I don't believe in anything supernatural or paranormal and things like that. So
yeah, you don't believe in the paranormal. You don't believe in ghosts or anything like that.
No. Oh yeah, this is one of the things when I was kind of going through that process. I had read some studies. Just somebody had sent this to me. Some scientists had done this study where they had taken a Christian person and a Muslim and a Buddhist, and they hooked up these little things to their head to monitor their brain activity. And they monitored the Christian and Muslim during prayer, and the Buddhist during meditation, and they all three had identical brain activity during that time. And they all three, when interviewed separately, reported the same feelings and sensations of, comfort and, the sort of euphoria, that they get, the spiritual feelings or whatever.
Right.
A few other studies I read along that line, which kind of started to tell me that a lot of these experiences that people have, that we attribute to God or angels or whatever, is really our brain, chemical, for whatever reason. Our brain does these things, and we might think that it's something else. And I have almost been physically attacked for telling somebody that one time. So, but
it is what it is, right?
Well, yeah, and that also explained why when I worked at the psychiatric center, we had some patients a lot of psychiatric patients, especially the ones that were like schizophrenic. They were very religiously fixated. They thought they were Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary or, something. I mean, and they were dead serious. And I remember talking to a couple of the psychiatrists there, some of the doctors, why that is. And they were explaining that it's believed that in your temporal lobe is kind of where spirituality is, your brain, processes spirituality.
Right.
So when you have like an injury to that part of the brain or some type of chemical imbalance to that part of the brain, it causes what he referred to as hyper-religiosity. Where basically, that's not saying that people that are religious are mentally ill, but some of these folks that, I killed my wife because God told me to, that kind of thing. It's because, something in that part of their brain is not firing correctly. And so they might literally think that they are hearing God because of whatever's wrong with them.
And you believe that to be true?
I mean, I've seen, like I said, in talking to scientists and doctors and reading peer-reviewed studies, to me, that is a solid conclusion that I've come to. So,
that is interesting. I like that. I like that way of thinking. Now you're doing this, and you're learning all this stuff. Is this what helped you to be an author? I mean, to write these books that you've been writing, or?
Yeah, I really do believe so. There's times I wish, because I'm 40 now, and things are just now really kind of getting going with my writing, and I wish that I could have gotten this off the ground when I was younger. I see some of these 20-year-olds just kicking butt in the writing world,
right.
But I think the knowledge and experience that I've gained over the years have kind of helped me be able to write the quality that I have right now. Because when I wrote Hand of God, my first book, once I returned here a couple years ago, I was going through my divorce. Things were really bad. I was really miserable. So I hadn't written in years, and I just sat down and started writing Hand of God, which is about a preacher who was also a serial killer.
Oh, wow.
Because he thinks God tells him to kill sinners, so he'll nail them to a cross and then dismember them and then dissolve their body in a vat of lye and acid.
Oh, so he's a nice guy.
What's that?
He's a nice guy.
Well, he thinks he is. And that's what was funny, because the books are written from his point of view, and a lot of people reading them said it was very weird because he actually seemed like a likable character, except for the fact that he killed people. But then I threw some supernatural elements in there too, whereas, there really wasn't a good guy and bad guy. There was sort of a bad guy and a worse guy. And so it was kind of, but and that's part of why I think that book didn't sell really well, though, is because, and maybe this was something I just had to kind of get out of my system. I threw a lot of sort of Bible verses in there, but I sort of put my own spin on certain parts of Christian theology, and certain passages from the Old Testament with fallen angels and things like that. And so I would mention these things and use Bible verses to explain it in the book and all those things. It was very kind of apocalyptic as the story went on. And,
wow. What was one of your first books you wrote?
I'm sorry?
What was the first book you did write?
The very first one I ever did write was Without a Trace. That was back in 2000, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I self-published that through like iUniverse at the time. Like I said, it's out of print now, and um, I thought about bringing it back. I don't have any of the files for it, so I'd have to basically buy like a hard copy of it. I think I have a hard copy of it, and like just redo it. And I kind of feel like I don't like to do that. I know some writers that do. I just kind of feel like once I've kind of told a story, that it's time to move on to the next one. And because I feel like when you write something, you're in a certain place at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's hard to go back to that place and like redo it or revisit it or do it again.
Yeah, but it's not that you have to pick up the book. It's like, people like us would like to read, come across it and say, oh, hey, this is something I'd like to read, pick it up and read it. Just because you're bored with it doesn't mean we have to be bored with it, right?
Well, that's a good point, I suppose. It's just for me, for the creative process, for me to sit down and write it, it would just be difficult to get back in the mindset that I was in at the time, or kind of get back into the head of those characters.
I gotcha.
I might do that one day just for just to do it, but I don't know. My problem is I always come up with new ideas and new stuff. I'm always thinking like 2 or 3 books ahead, so it's hard for me to think of going backwards and redoing something else when there's a whole new idea that I'm like, hey, this hasn't, because Without a Trace, I mean, yeah, it was kind of a cool story, and had its unique qualities, but I mean, especially there's no shortage of just sort of serial killer stories out there.
Right.
So,
well, what was the book about? What's the book about?
What's that?
What was the book about again?
Without a Trace, it was a young guy that was a corrections officer. So I was kind of writing from following the rule that they tell you to write what you know.
Right.
And he was worked at a sheriff's department and everything. And there was a serial killer on the loose called the Gravedigger, because he would take girls into his basement where he'd had the floor ripped up, and he would bury them alive up to their necks, and then
nice guy,
torment them, and then end up burying them completely. And this jail officer somehow got involved with with a veteran detective, and they had to catch the guy and stuff.
Okay. So it's something that I would enjoy reading, maybe?
You might, yeah.
If
there's
I could get it,
it's
right?
It's not real gory. There's some violence and some weird stuff, but nothing really over the top.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, then you went on to what was the name? Just go ahead and tell us about the books that you've written and stuff like that.
Okay. So that was Without a Trace. And the next one I did was called Out of Nowhere. And that was about a cop, a detective, and he gets partnered with this female detective that he doesn't want to work with. She's real sassy. And there's this rich guy who his son gets poisoned and dies mysteriously. And other people around him have been killed. And it turns out basically this hitman, these 2 hitmen were hired by somebody to kill this rich guy and get his money, and the cops are trying to find out who it is before they get to him, and they're toying with him and doing these other things. So one thing that I think I wasn't real happy with the ending. People kind of like the ending. I don't remember how I ended exactly. I kind of do, but one problem I had early on was I wanted so much to have these cool twists. I tended to get too cute for my own good, and then not knowing, because I had several that I didn't finish just because I kind of wrote myself into a corner and didn't know how to. I'm like, okay, well, I got all these twists in here now. I don't even know where to go with it because I've limited myself.
Right.
So much. I have all these things. To me, continuity is very important. I hate when there's a book where they establish something early on, but then later they break their own rules. The writer does, for that world or whatever, just because it's convenient or whatever. To me, that's cheating.
Yeah.
Or to just pull something out of your ass at the end. I hate that too.
Well,
so, ta-da, here it is.
I was just kind of sitting here imagining, really, this is what I was imagining. I was imagining you sitting there and you're writing this book, and I can see just going to town, and all of a sudden you think about something, and you go, "Wow, that's really cool," and then you go, "I can't put it in this book, but I'm going to put it in another one." So how do you keep track of doing that? I mean, how do you know if you got an idea? What do you do? Just jot it down and put it into a different memo, or start up another page somewhere and write it down, the idea that you have, and then
sometimes I'll just like pull up a Word or Google document and just write down just sort of just the basic premise of what my idea was. Sometimes though, usually when I get an idea like that, it's like when I'm halfway through something else, and it's such a ideas for writers tend to be really persistent. So sometimes I just sort of file it in the back of my head and it doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes, I just, once I get done, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start on this one. Sometimes I'm so excited because I think it's such a good idea. I'll actually start on it before I'm done with the other one, just to kind of get it going and kind of, finish up the one while I'm working on the other. Just because, I think the new idea is so much cooler than the one I was doing previously. So after I wrote those two, like I said, I had almost a 10-year gap, didn't write really anything officially. And then I wrote Hand of God. Didn't sell really well. It was just kind of there. Like I said, I think just people just didn't know what to do with it. A lot of people thought it was a Christian book. And Christians thought it was a Christian book, and they'd buy it and then send me hate mail. Because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So
misleading, weren't you?
Well, I wasn't trying to be. It was under horror, and I had the book description on there.
Well, then it's their fault.
Although one guy in his review was kind of funny. He said he thought the idea of a preacher that killed sinners was good until he read about my blasphemy against Jesus Christ later on, which I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there's some weird twists I have on the Christian theology there or whatever. And I just was like, so you're okay with, like, he was actually okay with the idea of a preacher killing sinners. He just didn't like that I blasphemed his theology.
Right.
So
right.
That was kind of funny. But so I wrote that one, and then I wrote Revenge of the Three. I was going to make the Hand of God stuff a trilogy. I wrote Revenge of the Three, which was kind of a continuation of the Hand of God books.
Right.
The same preacher guy. That one didn't do real well either. And so I figured I'd take a break from those. And then I had the idea for Dark Exorcist. I think I'd seen a couple demon possession movies that came out around that time. And I love that genre, but they were so stale, the last few movies that I'd seen. I kind of wanted to do my own spin on it. And so I came up with that idea, and I wrote that. And then I hired a cover designer, and she made that cover. I don't know if you've seen the cover for it. It's got this demon-possessed girl on the front. It's absolutely horrifying. I think I sold a bunch that thing was selling like out of the gate. I think the first day I sold like 20 ebooks, which for me was great. I was selling 1 or 2 a month total for almost 2 years. And then I released Dark Exorcist, and I sold like 20 the first day. So that one was selling really good. I think a lot of it was just due to the cover. People would see the cover, she would just shudder at it and everything. And it was more mainstream. It had some religious themes and stuff, but not at the depth that Hand of God did. It was more like from The Exorcist, it had priests and reading the rites of exorcism. But I kind of took it in a different direction than like the Exorcist movie and things like that. But some of those elements were there. And then from there, and I'm not sure where I got the idea. I think I started, I don't know what made me do it. I think it might have just had to do with stuff I was reading at the time. I'd kind of gotten the idea. Oh yeah. I started reading some stuff by Jack Ketchum, and he had, I think it was Off Season, which was about like a tribe of cannibals living like in the Northeast, in like Maine, and like attacking people around there or whatever. And I kind of got the idea. It's kind of a combination. It's funny how ideas come up. Mm-hmm. Around Halloween, me and my wife went to a haunted house, and they had these Halloween masks for sale. I didn't have anything for Halloween at all. And one of them was a Guy Fawkes mask. That's like what you see those anonymous guys wear, like V from Vendetta.
Yeah.
This was it was made of like fiberglass too. It wasn't like a cheap little plastic thing. It was like $20. So I bought it and I put it on, and it was pretty creepy. And for Halloween, I wore that and had like a plastic machete, and I wore a hoodie, and I stood in the driveway, and I'd stand perfectly still, and people thought I was a statue. And then they'd walk towards me, and I would start moving towards them, and they'd freak out and scream or whatever. And later on that night, my stepson, who was 7 at the time, put the mask on and he's walking around waving the machete around. And my wife mentioned how creepy he looked. And that's where the light bulb came on. So I wrote Family Night, which is about a guy who he's a serial killer basically, but he uses his kids, his 5-year-old son and 14-year-old daughter, and they go out wearing Guy Fawkes masks, and he uses the kids to like lure women, get their guard down, and then they capture them and take them out to his farm where they would, torture them and then cut them up and then have this ritual where they cooked them and ate them. So that was my first real like gory torture type story.
Wow.
And to my surprise, that one's been real popular.
How do you come up with this stuff?
Well, I just told you how I came up with that one.
I know, but I'm just saying,
yeah.
It's just like, wow, and then to get it down on paper, that's incredible. To be honest.
Yeah, it just, and I don't know, it just sort of kind of evolved, and I wrote that, and then from there I came up with the idea for Hell, Texas. That one had been kind of brewing in my head. I wanted to do something. Basically, what that one, and where the idea came for that one is, I don't know, have you ever been out this way, Texas, at all?
Oh, yeah.
From San Antonio, a couple years ago, I drove from San Antonio to Arizona to go visit my daughter. And between San Antonio and El Paso, as you get closer to El Paso, you get all these areas out there. It's like the hills have eyes, like literally. Like you're in all these dead zones, so there's no cell phone reception.
Right.
It's all these hills and rocks, and you look way up on these hills, and you see like a little house up there, and that's it. That's the only like sign of life anywhere nearby, and you're like, how does people get up there? What do they do? Right. So Hell, Texas is a group of Hispanic teens, and they're coming back from a road trip just from from wherever, from California, and they're between El Paso and San Antonio, and they get pulled over by this sheriff who tells them they're all under arrest for being illegal immigrants. So he takes them way back into the hills, into this little messed up town called Hell, Texas. He divides them up among different people in the town who all commit various acts of atrocities on each of them.
Right.
So it's kind of a combination. That one's got a lot of similarities to like Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw, and even a little bit of Frankenstein in there.
The one of the things is you see these, you read these books and you see these movies and stuff, and sometimes it makes people not want to travel no more. Especially like I'll never forget this. One time I was down in Louisiana, and I was actually driving truck at the time, and I got down there, and I was like, the directions that I got down there were like it says, okay, you got to take this route, and I got on that route, and by the time the road started getting narrower and narrower, and I'm like, all I could think of in my head was Deliverance, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm going to get, whatever. So I got down there, and all of a sudden I look and I stop, and there's literally this it's like a huge hill that goes down, and there's this big old freaking steel bridge that's out of the water. It's off to the side, and I'm like, I'm lost. How the hell am I going to back this truck? And I'm thinking, all I could start thinking about was this, I'm going to get butchered. Yep. Now this is my last stand right here. This is where I'm going to be. So it's people like you that scare the hell out of me. So
yeah, well, it was funny when I was on that road trip. I was on the phone, and me and my wife, we were dating at the time, so we were married, and I was divorced from my ex, and they lived in Arizona. And I stopped at this gas station, like way out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm in there getting a soda, and I filled up my car and everything. And as I'm walking out, I see this SUV pulled up, and like this like TV or like this total TV like nuclear family gets out. This dad gets out, and he's wearing like a polo shirt, and mom, and then this little boy, and then the teenage daughter, and the dog. And I took a picture, and I sent it to my wife, and I said, "These folks are going to get ate."
Really?
Well, because in those like Hills Have Eyes in those movies, you see this perfect family driving out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the group that's going to get trapped and get ate by somebody. So
it is scary, isn't it?
I don't know if they did or not, but if it was going to happen, it was going to happen to them. Better them than me, anyway. So, I don't taste good.
No, at least you don't know yet. I mean,
yeah, as far as I know.
But man, I mean, so now you've got pretty much you've been working, doing all these books. Now, last time you were on our show, what was the book that you were promoting at that time?
Dark Exorcist.
Yeah, that was it. Yep. And how did that do? How did your sales do on that?
It's still doing pretty good. Sales have kind of gone down on a little, and partly probably because I don't promote it as much because I have other stuff now. I'm really surprised. It's still selling like crazy in the UK. My other books do okay over there, but Dark Exorcist consistently sells pretty frequently over there. Still sells okay over here. And I think it's mostly residual, like people that have read my newer stuff, they're kind of going back now and reading, they go back and read some of my older stuff. Right. I noticed even Hand of God and Revenge of the Three sell more. I mean, they're not matching these other numbers by the newer ones by a long shot, but they're selling more now than what they were a year ago. So.
That's amazing. I mean, doing what you're doing, now let's, you talked earlier about how, you come up with these ideas and stuff like that. Now, how many books do you write at one time? I mean, do you do more than one, or do you just stick with one, finish it, and then move on to the next one?
I usually do one, and my books are usually between 30 and 40,000 words, which equates about around 150, 200 pages. Mm-hmm. So I can write a book in about maybe 2 months or so, give or take. Mm-hmm. Which to me is kind of good. Some folks say they wish my books were longer, but being a little bit shorter, people don't, like I said, they buy an ebook for $2.99. I don't feel like I'm getting gypped by selling it for $2.99 because if I was selling a 600-page book for $2.99, then I'd want to sell it for more, which might not sell as much. Secondly, because they're shorter, I can get them out more. So. Yeah, you buy my book and you're like, oh, okay, well, I read this in 2 days. Well, it's only going to be a month or two before the next one comes out, as opposed to other writers that it might be a year before another book comes out by that person.
Right.
So.
And you're working on a new project right now?
Yeah, I have. Well, I just released one right now called Bloody Bank Heist.
Okay.
And that was a little kind of a unique story. It's a little bit different than my others. This one's about a couple, and they're broke, and they're desperate, and they have no money, and things are horrible for them. So they decide to rob a bank, and then things go bad, so they kidnap the bank manager to escape. But then once they get escaped and they have the bank manager, it turns out he is a murdering sociopathic cannibal, and he ends up taking them captive and does horrible things. So,
let me ask you something. Now you kind of got me thinking here. I'm going to name a movie, and I want you to tell me what you thought about it.
Okay.
Gothica.
I saw that. It was a really long time ago. I saw that. Is that the one with Halle Berry?
Yeah.
It was okay. It was kind of, if I remember, it was kind of trippy.
Well,
was it trippy?
Yeah.
Like weird visions and.
Well,
I don't.
The whole thing was it was like, it was like one of those movies that you kind of. It's something that you would do. I mean, to be honest with you, when you're telling me, it's just like, it doesn't have a, this woman, she's a doctor and she's a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever, and she works for a mental institution, and, she supposedly murders her husband with an axe, and they know that she did it, and she's like, can't figure it out, and come to find out it's, of course, a spirit that possessed her body or whatever it is, but the part where she chops him up into a bunch of pieces with the axe, I thought that'd be something you would do, right?
Oh well, probably. Like I said, I saw that movie. I only seen it once. It was a long time ago. And
it's actually one of my favorite movies. I
might have to check it out again. It's been a long time.
Robert Downey Jr. played in there, and
oh wow,
it was like, yeah, I mean. to me it was like one of the moments where when I first watched it, I was just like, oh my god, that was when it was all done and the credits are rolling, I was left there like wow. And so it's kind of like one of your books. You make them. To me, it's like you said. You're making them. You make it. They're short books. They're not long in detail like The Stand was, or anything like that. But the thing about it is it keeps. If you're able to put out so many books, like like say every 2 months or every 3 months or stuff like that, that's how you're going to keep your audience in there, and your name will be up there, of one of their favorite authors. I mean, have you ever had anybody come up and recognize you or anything like that and say, hey, I love your stuff?
Not just out of nowhere, but when I've been at like events, it's always been cool. Like, I go to like horror cons and I'll get a table as a vendor, or like there's a Comic-Con here, things like that. A few times somebody that maybe from Facebook or something that follows my Facebook page or something, they'll walk up and be like, hey, it's good to meet you in person, or and what's really crazy, it's when it's somebody that I've never communicated with. Maybe they've read my books and they follow me on Facebook, but they've never like actually like messaged me or emailed me or anything. So I don't even know that, and they come up and tell me how much they love all my books and how much, that's kind of a humbling and just sort of almost a surreal thing, that idea that there's people out there that other than people that I know, friends and family, that are fans of my stuff, that are like excited about meeting me and want to take a picture with me, and you know what I mean.
It's got to be a thrill.
Yeah, it's really cool. I don't get how when I see folks that act put off by fans and things like that, I don't understand it, because it absolutely tickles me to death when that happens. So
yeah, no doubt. I mean, one of the biggest things that it's just like having. I remember one day I was sitting downtown and my wife Jody, I think she was in a store or something, and I was just sitting outside on a bench, and this guy come walking by, and he kind of does this maybe a triple take, like, and then he looks at me and goes, "Are you Robert?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and I go, "I don't even know this guy." He goes, "Oh, yeah, you're on the radio show, aren't you?" And I go, yeah. He goes, "Man, you guys are awesome." I'm like, I'm sitting there looking like, how did this happen? I'm not even on TV or anything like that, but, he just, he must have, recognized my face from the pictures and stuff. For you to, now, do you go to these meets, these author, what are they, like seminars and stuff like that, or like,
no,
kind of like,
I don't do a lot of like formal book events. Book signings are really hard to do anymore, like in a bookstore. Big places like, if you're not with a major publisher or some big name, a lot of places they won't even have you. And the ones that will, they want such a huge cut of your sales, it's not even worth the gas to go do it. Like I said, if I go to like here, they had Alamo City Comic-Con last October. It was around Halloween. Thing was huge. They had Walking Dead cast members there, and the guy that played Chewbacca from Star Wars was there. Not Billy D. Williams.
Really?
The guy that was Darth Maul, he was there. So all those things, and I got a vendor table, meet another writer, and I sold quite a few books that weekend. And you see all these people in costumes, and a lot of people were coming up and talking to us, look at your books, and
you got any,
get your business cards. So it was really, really a fun event.
You got any celebrities that are fans of you?
Celebrities that are fans of me?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
I bet you they're out there.
Yeah, I met Gunnar Hansen at a horror con back in October. He was the one that played the original Leatherface. And I told him I was a writer, but I didn't really. It was kind of weird. I'm usually not at a loss for words, but I was kind of a bumbling idiot talking to him because I was such a fan. And I got an autographed picture from him. And
don't feel that.
Kind of went on my way.
It's like, I get to meet a lot of celebrities and stuff like that, and I don't know, for some reason I don't make a big deal of it, but I do know one thing, it's like I think there's only one person out there I'd probably die of a heart attack if I ever got to meet this person. So it's like,
yeah.
I
would well, in your line of work, because for about a year there, in addition to doing my books and everything, I was running a mixed martial arts website. I'm a big MMA fan.
Oh yeah.
And I was going to like various like local events and things like that. And so I've met some UFC fighters. I met Holly Holm. She's a former world champion boxer. Now she's fights with Legacy, and she's a top contender to possibly beat Ronda Rousey one day. People think. I interviewed a lot of them over the phone. Jessica I've done some phone interviews with her and a few others, and so it's like I met a couple UFC fighters in person, and whatever, or you talk to them on the phone. So I kind of get what you're saying, because it's like I was so excited, but yet I wanted to act like I belong there.
Yeah. Well, it's just like it's like I work with I work with Buster Mathis Jr. and and you know who he is. So and and people say, "Oh my God, you get to hang out with Buster." And I said, "Yeah, he's one of my best friends, And they're like, wow, what's he like? And I'm going, well, why don't you ask him yourself? He's right here. It's like, and you can tell they're just really excited. I'll never forget one time we walked into a garden show, and I told people, I go, yeah, Buster, he's gonna be coming here, and they're all like, yeah, they all thought I was blowing snot, here comes walks Buster, and I'm standing there, and like people are like running to try to get a picture taken with the celebrity. I'm like, man, oh man, I don't understand why people just can't act. These people are people. It's just like they're doing a job. That's their career. This is what they do. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of amazing. But in your line of work,
yeah, and it's funny because you get to where, like, in my case, I mean,
hello, I didn't lose you, did I?
I'm still here. You're kind of cutting out for a minute.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
okay, there you are.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Well, and that's like, in my side, sometimes I have people that act like, they'll say something about, hey, do you want to donate? Hey, we got this Kickstarter project. Do you want to donate some sales from your books to this project? And, oh, we know you're doing really well. And I'm like, my books are doing okay, but I mean, I'm lucky if I can make my car payment this month. I mean, they're not doing that good just yet. I think it's just with the internet now, it's like, it's almost easier. Not that I'm famous, I want to say, but it's easier to become famous than rich. I mean, they talk about being rich and famous. It's like, right. I know some singers that have become, quote unquote YouTube sensations. They had 1 million fans on their Facebook page, didn't have $1 to their name, so it's just part of the technology, I guess, that we have now.
All right. But see, the thing about it is one of the things, this is what I do for a living. I own a web development company, and I do marketing, stuff like that. And it's people like you, who go out there and you bust your butts trying to get people to buy your books. And where I've seen a lot of authors make the mistake, they think once their book hits the, like, say, Amazon and all these other places, they don't have to do anything. They just have to sit there, and they think that, oh, yeah, I'm going to be this famous author and all this other stuff, and they just sit there and sit there and sit there. You coming on our show, just doing that, and people are going to hear it. People are going to pull this up, and, they could pull this podcast up a year from now, and they're going to say, oh, man, this guy, he sounds really cool. I'm going to go look for one of his books. So, in today's world, the internet is a very powerful marketing tool, even for you. And a lot of times I get the same idea. I get the same, not the same idea, but I get the same thing over and over again where they say, well, I don't have time to self-promote myself. Well,
and one thing, where I feel good about my sales. You mentioned your friend who had the book that was selling, 50,000 books a month or whatever, then just suddenly stopped. Right now, I don't have any one book that is grossly outselling the rest. All of my books are selling within 10 to 20 copies of each other for the most part every month, which to me, that's a good sign.
Because you got a fan base.
What's that?
You got a fan base.
Well, yeah, it shows I have a fan base, and I would rather have mediocre across the board numbers than have, because exactly what happened to your friend will happen is you have a breakout book, and it might be nuts for a little while, and then it just stops. So if you don't have something else for the fans to go to, then you're just kind of left there. So
well, that's just like with with the record industry. I know this one person who, he put out an album like 9 years ago, and and he's still trying to promote that one record, and then he's like, I don't know why I'm not selling any more records anymore. And I'm like, and what I said it's played out, and oh boy, did he hate that. Oh man, did he just no, it can't be played out. I still sell them. I go, dude, listen. Yeah, and tell me if this isn't kind of what happens to you, maybe, or to authors and stuff. You put out a good product, you put something out that entertains your fans and stuff, and then if you just like say, well, I'm going to put one out every 2 years or whatever the case may be, in the music industry, if you put an album out every 2 years, you keep your fan base large. But if you wait 9 years, 10 years to do another album, you're not going to have your fan base.
It's almost a whole new generation coming up that's not even going to know who you are at that point.
Right. And this is it just has to be the same way with you. That's why when you said, I could put out, what's your goal? Like to put out maybe every 3 months or every 6 months, or
I try to do at least about every 3 months.
Yeah.
I don't really, once I get it ready, because I write it, I don't do a ton of revising. I know some people, they go through and they labor over every sentence. I don't do that because of the nature of my books, because they're so depraved and twisted and intense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're very raw, so I don't want to go back and polish it too much, because I think that takes away some of that edginess from it. I'll go through and I'll clean, if there's, I'll clean up any inconsistencies, and sometimes I forget to change, I get the character's name wrong later, all that kind of stuff. I fix all that up. If I need to expand on anything, I expand on it, add more details, things like that. And then I send it off to my editor, and sometimes they're not terribly long, so she can get it usually within about 2-3 weeks or so. And then I make my own covers now. I learned how to do cover design. I don't do anything super fancy, but I know enough to make them look pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So that saves me some money there, and so it saves me some time. So I get that, and I start doing some, kind of pre-marketing thing, cover reveal, all that kind of cool stuff. When it comes back from the editor, I just go through and go to another once over, and then I publish it.
Oh,
so,
wow. And then you just sit there and you go, okay, how's it gonna do? But you
then I just look at my bank account and wait for the money to start rolling in.
But the thing about it is it's just like, okay, the reason why I'm using this as a comparison is it's because of what I really do know, the music industry. Obviously, I know that really well, and doing what you're doing now, there could be one day you could be writing this book, and in your mind you're saying, yeah, this one's gonna be a real good one, and all of a sudden, boom. It could be the one that completely just blows out of the water, and sells maybe 2-3 million copies. I mean, that can happen. That something like that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
You could be the next, big time writer. Now, you told me before the show that you're right now working on possibly a film right now.
Yeah, and it's not something. I haven't written it. That's what's kind of funny. I just sort of, there was a Craigslist ad I happened to be browsing through one day, and he said he was a local indie filmmaker. He's making a slasher film. He needed a couple athletic young people for victims, and then he said he needs somebody with a large menacing build to play the killer. So I sent him some photos of myself in that Halloween costume I told you about earlier. Including some pictures of me standing next to some people, like I'm stabbing them or whatever.
Right.
And he called me because I'm about 6'1", about 300 pounds. So
about the same size as me.
So yeah, he called me up and he goes, you're exactly the size I'm looking for. So the film was called The Keeper, and we started shooting a few weeks ago. We've done a couple scenes. We've done a trailer, and then we kind of took a break from shooting. The photographer had to go out of town, and then here in a couple of weeks we're going to resume. Basically, it's premise of the story is the keeper. I'm this guy, grew up all messed up, and I'm like the keeper of like this cemetery, the groundskeeper of the cemetery, and these group of college kids show up to drink and party and screw around in the cemetery and defile my sacred ground. So I have to go through and kill them all one at a time. So
you got to be enjoying that.
It's a blast. Filming the scenes, because they do all these different takes of me like walking through the woods, like just shooting my feet, and then they put the camera on like a small little stick sticking out of the ground, so I would like walk right towards it and walk over it, and then they did different angles, and I wear this really ugly, dirty looking, torn up T-shirt, and then I took like fake blood. I'd smear fake blood on my face like it's war paint, because I don't wear a mask. I just had the blood on my face and dirt like war paint. So I have this big knife that I carry around. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So now you're going to be a movie star.
Well, I don't know. I don't get paid unless the movie sells. So, we're hoping the movie does well. The director, he said his kind of goal is to sort of revive the classic, slasher genre. It's very, we're doing it on a very practically nothing budget because, he knows people that have the equipment and, we pretty much do our own costumes.
Now, does he let you collaborate on some ideas or anything like that, or do you just kind of like keep your mouth shut?
I mean, I'll give ideas on my character and stuff. But so far, because I haven't seen the whole script, because he only gives us, for whatever we're going to be shooting, he'll give us each our part of the script for our character for that part, which I guess is pretty typical. He said he's had material stolen before, so he's very protective. So he's only giving us, what he has, and he's doing some rewrites right now. So, yeah, I just, he's open to feedback. So as we're shooting, like for example, one of the scenes we were doing, he wanted me to have the guy against the tree and just have the knife up against his throat. And I said, well, would it look better? Because the guy is kind of short. If I sort of put my hand on his neck and like have him stand on his tiptoes a little bit, and then me hold the knife with the other hand, and we shot it that way, and it ended up looking a lot cooler than doing it the other way because it just looked. Because my hand, he's not a very big guy, so my hand was like almost bigger than his head, so it looked pretty freaky.
Yeah, well, that's kind of cool. I mean, now, how does your family feel about this? About your books and now you're married, right? Right now, or
yeah, and it's fun because the whole family pretty much gets into it. My 13-year-old stepdaughter, she isn't into it as much. But my stepson, who's 8, he's got a part in the film also. He plays a character named Junior, who's kind of like a creepy kid.
Yeah.
And then my wife is the first victim. She's in the trailer. She's the one I kill in the trailer.
Oh, that's good. You get to do her for free.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. And then you probably wink at her and say, yeah, just remember this. Okay? Yeah.
Well, although in the trailer, it just, because the way it does is, she's running and I'm walking and she's running and then she trips and falls and then you see me coming up to her with a knife and then she screams and then the screen cuts to black and then the credits roll. So I don't actually.
Is that link available?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Well, good God, you're gonna have to give me that link inside our thing while we're talking here because I'm definitely gonna have to play that trailer.
Now I will tell you that they're still working on the sound. So it's got the music on there, but you're going to hear some kind of... Her screams are not very good because we were in a public park with no permits.
Yeah.
So she couldn't scream very loud. They're going to voice it over later because we didn't want to draw attention to the big scary guy with the bloody knife. And have the park police show up and shoot me dead or something.
Get the cops called on you. What are you doing? We're really shooting a film here. Yeah, likely story. It's like, yeah, okay. But man, I mean, you got a pretty amazing now. Now, what's the future? What's the future hold for you?
Let me see here. I'm trying to find the link. Sorry. Okay. Well, I mean, we're working on that. We are.
What about doing a screenplay?
Well, I had written Dark Exorcist as a screenplay.
Yeah.
And I'd had an indie film company that was interested, but then I guess they got tied up with some other projects, so they passed on it. And I hadn't really had time to mess with it. I am working on another screenplay, and I'm on like a third draft. Another indie film director had hired me to work on it. It's about John Wayne Gacy before he started killing. Yeah. kind of like, how he became what he was.
Right.
So that one's been a little bit trickier because it's for the first time, I was hired to do that one, so it's a new thing for me to write somebody else's vision. So I'll do a draft and I'll send it to him, and then he'll send it back with notes as to, what he likes and what he wants me to change and that kind of thing. And then I'll redo it and send it back. So, it's coming along pretty good, but it's a new experience for me.
We got to get you. Just to think that one day you could be doing your own movie. Directing maybe your own movie, writing it and directing it. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
I don't know about directing. I mean, the acting thing, and this is what's funny is because I've gotten quite a few compliments so far on the people that have seen the trailer, and there's some other raw footage that I think they're going to be reshooting most of it because the lighting is bad, but we had some raw footage that I got to see, and I showed a few friends of mine and a few actor friends who all thought I didn't know what I was doing, but they all thought I did a really good job, of doing the character and everything. So,
oh hell yeah, you're going to do a good job. You live it inside your head.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, especially, especially I met Gunnar Hansen, and it's always been. I never wanted to act. It's not something I ever said, oh yeah, I want to be an actor, but I always kind of thought, especially after I met Gunnar Hansen and I read his book called Chainsaw Confidential, which is about basically he goes through sort of frame by frame on how they made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and so I'd always kind of thought if I was ever going to do a film that doing if I could be a slasher like Jason or Leatherface or something like that would be the coolest thing. And so when that opportunity came up, I was like, yeah, I'm all over it.
I look at your picture and you don't look like you're a slasher.
Oh, did you see my Facebook picture?
No, the one on Skype.
Yeah, well, look at my Facebook picture.
Yeah, I saw that one.
That's me. That's me in costume.
Really?
And I just Facebook messaged you the
trailer. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. Just now, you said the sound's not that good, or?
Well, I mean, you'll hear the music, and then the printing on the screen, kind of, as the story goes on. I'm just saying, my wife, when she screams, her screams aren't very loud, and that's because she couldn't scream loud. They're going to voice over the screams, and then there's a part later where you can hear the director say "cut." So anybody that hears it, we know it's there, so they don't have to email us and tell us.
Yeah.
Because when I first put it out there, I got like a dozen messages, and I'm like, yes, I know. That's why it says raw edit. We're still fixing it.
You know who you kind of remind me of in that picture? You're holding that knife, and it's just like there's that big freaking humongous bald guy on one of those horror films that's in. I don't even know which one it's in. I just know that there's this big scary guy, and you look like you're like nuts in that picture, man.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was funny because we were getting ready to shoot, and when we did the other stuff where they're just showing my legs, because once again we're in a public park, we waited until the last minute just for the final parts there that we're going to show my face, to put the stuff on my face, so that if anybody walked up on us, they didn't, we wanted to keep me out of out of that makeup stuff as long as possible. We weren't totally sure what to do with it, so I just took the fake blood. My wife had taken my stepson to go to the bathroom. I took the fake blood, put it on my fingers, and like my 3 fingers, and just kind of smeared it across my face and then along the top of my head, and sort of that war paint look. I took a handful of dirt and literally threw dirt on my face. Like I just chucked it at my face. And when my wife and stepson came back, he like kind of froze when he saw me, and my wife was like, "Oh my God." And I couldn't see myself, and even the director's like, "Holy shit." And I was like, "Does it look good?" So, yeah, apparently,
my God.
Apparently it looked all right.
That's just amazing, man. That's got to kind of be a thrill for you to do that now. So if it does real good, now, like say, this could be probably picked up by another. Now, when you say it's an indie film, did you say?
Yeah.
What's the difference in what's an indie film?
Well, it's just the director. He's producing it, and he's shooting it basically on his dime. we make our own costumes. We don't have a studio backing us, anything like that.
Okay.
So usually what the process is, we'll shoot the movie and then he'll do all the edits and all that other cool stuff. And then they'll try to send it to various film festivals and those types of things. While it's doing the film festival tour, a lot of the distributors are there at those things. And so he'll try to get us, we'll try to get a distribution deal for it. And then once it gets a distribution deal, because like a lot of the big companies like Paramount and Miramax and Lionsgate, not only do they make movies, but they distribute. So like Lionsgate, let's say, says, hey, we like this, we want to buy it. They'll pay a chunk of money for it or whatever. And then, I would get whatever cut of that, and then once they get it, they can do whatever they want to it. They can change the title, they can cut scenes out, they can add stuff in. So,
can they recast it?
I guess if they wanted to reshoot something and recast part of it or something, they could, I guess.
Isn't that now? Wouldn't that be like stealing their story, but they still get credit as the director and the writer, right?
I guess it would just depend on the contract when they purchase it. It would just depend on the terms, I guess. That's the part I'm not super familiar with. That's just kind of what's been explained to me by other folks that I know in the industry. But my understanding is that usually when it comes to distribution, that it's pretty much that they're buying it, that it becomes their property to do with as they please. So sometimes they'll buy it and they'll shelve it and won't do anything with it. Or maybe they have something similar coming out on their own, so they'll buy that to keep it from competing with theirs and just shelve it. So
really? Hopefully
that won't happen, but my thing is, the nice thing is because this is kind of cool because I'm not I'm not a writer on the movie. I'm just basically an actor for this. Is that I don't have to really all I had to do was worry about going there and looking scary and walking scary and doing scary things, and I work on promoting it and everything else and doing my part as far as those things go. But the director and them, I'll let them handle kind of that end of it because he knows what he's doing.
Really. Now, do you want what would I'm just going to ask this question because I have to. Okay, you probably already told me, but I want to hear you say it again. Do you want, if you had an idea for a movie right now, other than the one you've already written, what would be the ideal horror movie that you would want to come up with?
I would love to see. I think my book Family Night would make a great horror film. There's certain parts that would be tricky because the victims are, naked or nude most of the time while they're being tortured, and there's little kids involved in the torture. So I don't know how that would go over. So we might have to change some things there. Hell, Texas, I think would be a good movie. There's certain parts of Hell, Texas I think would be tricky to adapt, but we could do it. But I think both of those would make really good films. I think Night of Vengeance would too, but Night of Vengeance is one I had to come out not too long ago. It happens on a little bit bigger scale, so it'd be a little more expensive to do. Those two movies, Hell, Texas and Family Night, are kind of all take place to just a handful of people in a small location. So from a budget and filming standpoint, it would be pretty expensive to shoot something like that.
Right. Oh, man. So, listen, you're an amazing person, and, I really do like talking to you. I love to hear just to hear the story. And and how you came up with the material and everything, and how you put it together. Now, looking back, let's look back in your childhood and stuff like that. Did you ever pull little pieces of things, of ideas that you had when you were younger to fill into the book? I mean, you said you lived a pretty good childhood. Your parents are pretty good. And all this other stuff, but do you ever thought maybe when you were younger, laying in bed, that you would ever become an author? Or what was your? I guess maybe let me ask you this: what did you want to be when you grew up?
I mean, when I was younger, I always thought it'd be cool to be a writer. I didn't know. My thing was I didn't know what it would take to actually accomplish that.
Mm-hmm.
And another problem I have. And this is where, with the internet self-publishing, it's been so good for me, is that it's not that I don't play well with others. I don't like people that are self-important or that I perceive to be self-important. I don't like to have to kiss people's butts, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the traditional book industry, that's kind of what you have to do is, you go through all these hoops to get an agent. Now, once you get an agent, you got to go through all these hoops to get a publisher. And then you got to do all these things that your editor wants. And it's kind of like the movie with the distribution deal. You sell your book and say, Penguin says we want to publish your book. And then, they could come back and say, you know what, you've got this rape scene. We don't like that. We're going to cut that out. That's too intense. Oh, you got this part that's cannibal. We're going to cut that out. Oh, you got this kid doing this. We're going to cut that out. So by the time it's all done, yeah, I might have made some money, but my book is now not what I envisioned it to be or what I intended it to be. They do the cover and that kind of thing. So I like having control over my own work. Doing it this way might be the harder way and it might take longer, but at the same time, I get a bigger cut of my own royalties and I have complete control over all my own stuff. I don't have somebody telling me what to do.
A lot of people are doing that these days, oh man.
Well, and it's it's getting almost near impossible to get a big publisher now because unless you already are somebody well established, like a big name, Snooki has a bestseller for God's sakes. So
yeah, but back in the day, let's just years and years and years ago, it didn't take much to publish a book, because that's what people were doing is they're reading books and books. You can go buy books now today with the electronic ebooks and all this other stuff. You just kind of tend to you kind of wonder. There's a few things you kind of wonder about, and you kind of like you kind of like think, where's it going to be, in 10 years? Where are these writers going to be? And it's just like, I think like with the music industry, I think, publishers and stuff like that, they're going to run into the same problem. You're going to have authors that just can promote themselves so easily and cut out the middleman.
Well, that's what's happening right now. And the big publishers, that's why they've been having to kind of struggle and scramble to change their business model, and some are doing it a little bit faster than others. And I don't pay attention to a lot of that. I know a lot of authors kind of get all up into the politics, what's happening with New York and whatever. I just kind of keep an eye on it and all those things. But, Amazon, I tend to not like big corporations, but Amazon, I guess for right now anyway, is kind of the champion of the little guy because they're the ones that open the door, for guys like me to just basically, like you said, skip the middleman and do it directly. And just put our own books out there. And, I see these articles from editors from big publishing companies complaining about indie books, which tells me that, we're cutting into their market share and we're making a difference. People are buying our books and enjoying them and buying more. I think people enjoy the fact, especially when it comes to extreme horror. I think people enjoy the fact that when they buy one of my books, they're getting the exact raw vision that, I put down on paper, not what some editor, 5 states away thinks that they want to read. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, you've already proven that you've got a following already.
Yeah, I do.
And that's a huge accomplishment. I mean, there's people out there who write books that don't even they might sell 10 books.
Yeah, and that goes back. There's writers now. Like when you're talking about your friend who had the album 10 years ago. I mean, I've seen writers. I saw one on Facebook just not too long ago. He released his first book, his only book, but at the same time I released Hand of God. He still doesn't have anything new out, and he was just complaining on Facebook the other day. And I see writers that do this, and they go on about, well, they're going to give up on writing and publishing, and nobody wants their books because readers are stupid and don't want to read good stuff like his. They only want to read crap like everybody else's. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, well, number one, another thing to the marketing too is not just, because I go on Facebook and I post about my books and things, but I also talk to people and I interact with folks. Going to events. Important. I'm not just constantly spamming, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Because after that just becomes anymore, it's just noise.
Yeah, it is, and you're actually pushing it. In my opinion, is you're pushing it just a little bit too much. You know what I'm saying?
1 or 2 days a week, every 3 or 4 days, I'll go through some different Facebook groups and pages that I'm on, and on my wall, I post links and little graphics that I make, with my books and stuff, little quotes from reviews and things. People don't seem to mind it a couple times a week, once, just doing it once, not every 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
Any big news, if I get like a really cool review, I'll post that. Sometimes I get funny 1-star reviews, and I'll post those too. Like the other day, I got one. You guys said this book has way too much graphic sex and violence.
Okay, well,
and give me a 1-star review, and I was like, yeah, well, I'm not writing Shakespeare here, guy.
well, you know how people are, though.
I know. I just thought it was funny, but it's funny because some of my other horror writers that are friends of mine, they're like, see, that review would make me want to buy your book.
Yeah, because it would. Believe it or not. I mean, look, you remember a few years ago that stupid guy on YouTube who was crying about Britney Spears?
Oh yeah.
Look what happened to him.
What did happen to him?
Multi-millionaire now.
Oh really?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
I mean he makes that one video went viral, and he got caught up in frickin' talk shows and all this other stuff. He's frickin' doing all this other stuff now, and he got to meet Britney Spears, and just because something idiotic. I mean, I don't know what's this world coming to. But anyway, we're at the point in the time in this show where I like to take my guests. I like to take them outside their element. Of course, you being an author, it's going to be kind of hard to do that because you're just you're very imaginative, but. We got, I've talked political and I've talked spiritual, and tonight you kind of hit on a subject, and one of these things is that it seems to me like you're a very logical person. You probably have like this thought in your mind. Well, if it doesn't seem logical, it isn't real. You know what I'm saying? You were talking earlier about God, how you become more of an atheist, and yet you wanted to be a minister and stuff like that. And I guess they call that falling from grace, maybe, whatever the case may be.
Okay.
And being in this, you said that you've talked to people, doctors, and stuff like that, where you don't think that there's an afterlife. You don't think that when you're dead, you're dead. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, pretty much.
Really? And why? I mean, okay, let's why do you believe that? I mean, truthfully.
Well, it's like I said, the things I mentioned earlier. Another thing is I was kind of going through that whole deal. I felt like, at the time of my conversion to Christianity, I felt like I'd had this religious experience, right? I felt like I'd experienced God, and, I'd gone through these things, and, over the years through going, working in ministry and stuff, I'd seen all these other people that all claimed these other experiences, some of which were contradictory to each other. Some, they would do mean and nasty things because they said God told them to, and all this other stuff. And that's kind of when I started kind of re-evaluating myself, thinking, okay, I was basing a lot of my beliefs on personal experience and feelings, but yet I see these other people doing the same thing. So how am I right and they're wrong, or vice versa? But what, my experiences were leading me to, want to try to help people and stuff. Other people's, maybe they thought they were helping people by being mean or, being nasty or whatever they were doing. That's kind of when I started doing that research of, religious, experiences in the parts of your brain and those kind of things. And that's kind of when I decided that, I need to I need to start basing things on, what do facts tell us, because your feelings and experiences, don't really mean anything, because it could have been, people that think they see UFOs and things like that. I guess they could have seen it, but a lot of times your mind plays tricks on you, your brain plays tricks on you. Based on that, so I believe, I started to believe that, okay, then there is no God, that we're organic, creatures that are here on Earth and so forth, and we live, we breathe, we do whatever, and we die. I guess one of my thoughts is, and I don't know, some people thought this was kind of a mean way. As more I thought about it, is I kind of felt like in a way for us, it's almost kind of arrogant to think that, we were born and we didn't exist before we were born, and the universe existed without us. I think it's almost a human invention and a form of arrogance, I think, to think that the universe cannot function without you, so that even once your body dies, your consciousness continues to live somewhere else because you just can't imagine yourself not existing.
No, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, I'm not doubting what you're saying. It's just that, after maybe a little bit after the show, I'll tell you a little bit about something, that happened to me. But, I've heard this story over and over again where, they think it's the mind that, when, there's been case studies when people die that, they see they see the tunnel, they see the light, these near-death experiences and stuff like that. And here's one of the things is one time, and maybe if you really, like I said, I'm not going to try to change your mind, but I'm just telling you from a different perspective. I used to have this thought in my mind that when I grew up, my grandmother preached the Bible to me nonstop. And I was terrified of this God. I was terrified of this Jesus. I was like, God, anything I do is a sin. If I look at a girl, I'm going to go to hell. If I do this, I'm going to go to hell. And all this other stuff. And everything was like, you're going to go to hell. She didn't preach how about heaven that much, how wonderful heaven. It was all about if I didn't do right, I was going to burn in hell. And later on in life, I was like thinking to myself, I go, hey, listen, I don't know. It's just, I find it hard to believe that God, if there is a God, that he would make people suffer like that. I found it hard to believe that, they talk so well about how God is. And I kind of got thinking, does he really exist? And here's I call it my proof that there is something different about us as human beings. Christians don't believe in evolution, and do you know why that is?
Well, yeah, I know why. Genesis 1:1 and all that good stuff.
Yeah, but the reason is in order for us to evolve to what we are today, okay, we are a species that evolved. We can walk, we can talk, we can drive cars, fly airplanes, have all these electronics, and do everything, okay? Put that thought in your mind, right? Now, we know about evolution, and here's the whole thing, is we're the only species that evolved to do that. Why didn't any other species, or why are scientists not finding any other species that's evolving to where we were at 1 million years ago, or 10,000 years ago, whatever the case may be, and stuff like that. Now, another thing I look at is they talk about the Bible. We've all heard the stories about the Bible. We all know about the religion of the Bible, okay? And then you start to put the pieces in the puzzle together, and you start to think, okay, how did we get here from, they say that the Middle East was where everything started out in the Middle East. Well, that's basically where that's where religion started, was in the Middle East. And it branched out. Okay? So, I look at these, and I look at them as fact. I mean, here, and then one of the other things that I don't try to think that if I die, I'm going to die. Death is a very peaceful thing. It's not something that people should be afraid of. When you die, you die. You're done. And I get that. I really do get that. But why deprive somebody of maybe that thought that there is something after death? Not to mention, there has been credible paranormal investigators out there who have been everything, and they've captured voices. Now, not that broken up crap, but I'm talking actual a voice you can verbally hear it and you can distinguish it's a woman's voice. How do you explain that?
Well, a couple of things. On the one thing, when you said about depriving somebody of, if the thought of heaven or something like that gives them, peace or comfort, I don't look to deprive anyone of their belief. I don't usually go around trying to convert Christians or, mocking people's beliefs. Usually it's the other way around. Usually I get people, when they ask me to tell them I'm an atheist, they start trying to convert me and stuff. Folks are welcome to believe what they want, and I have no, as long as they're not getting up in my face about it, they're welcome to that if that gives them peace and comfort. As far as the paranormal thing, it just kind of goes back to we talk about the scientific method, and I am not a scientist, so I'm not a complete expert on this. I do have a basic understanding of the scientific method. So you go into this house and you set up this recorder or whatever, and you pick up this strange voice.
Right.
So the problem where these investigators run in is when it comes to their analysis, they're not, and I don't know what would be a scientific way to rule out and rule in. So, like, I guess, for example, what's the example I'm trying to think of? If I'm sitting in the house and I hear some kind of footstep scratching sound in my ceiling,
right?
I know people that will say that's ghosts.
Yeah,
I say
right.
It's probably squirrels.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Yes.
And I guess, and so I'm thinking the same thing on the tape. I mean, yeah, you might hear a woman's voice. Where did it come from? And not to mention, I mean, I don't know, some of these paranormal investigators, I mean, I'm a skeptic anyway, so when I watch a TV show and they're in a house and they record it and they pick up a voice, I don't know if something's been edited. I don't know if that whole thing's been staged.
This is what I'm talking to. No, I get that.
So that's one thing.
Hey, listen, man, I get that. I really do. I get that. That it could possibly be something else, but there has been, things that have been produced and they've been analyzed by, I mean, we're talking colleges and people just, it's kind of like a UFO. Mm-hmm. Obviously, do you believe that there's life on other planets?
I mean, I suppose it's possible. I know scientists just found that planet. It's like an Earth, they said, called it, I forget what they called it, but they said it's like Earth's twin. Mm-hmm. It's like several million light years away, but looks like it has same type of atmosphere and things that the Earth has. So we don't know. And this is kind of what, kind of the same thing is, I mean, when it comes to like paranormal or aliens or any of that kind of stuff, just because we don't have the explanation, we have a sound on a recording, we don't know what it is, that doesn't mean it's a ghost. But I know people that jump to that conclusion. That's my thought. That's kind of where I come from is, well, yeah, it sounds like it might be this or that, but we honestly don't know. And just because
they say it
doesn't mean there isn't one.
Right. But again, it's there's no real scientific proof that says that there is no God.
Well, but that's the thing. When it comes to science or even like philosophy for that matter, you cannot prove a negative.
No.
Just like in a court of law, you have to prove the person did it. He doesn't have to prove his innocence. Mm-hmm. Christians or theists are the ones making the claim that God exists. So the burden of proof is on them.
Right.
To show that God, I've had people say, well, prove to me God doesn't exist. Well, that's like saying, prove to me that you weren't in Cleveland. I mean,
right. No, you know what? This is why I love talking about this subject. Is because you're really, you get what I'm trying to say. There's no way that you can tell me that there's no God. And there's no way that I can tell you that there's a God. Because there's that balance of people who don't believe in it. I believe this is strongly how I feel. I believe that when we do go on, when we die, I do believe that there's something unexplained what happens after we die. Okay? I can't tell you if we could become ghosts. I can't tell you if we go somewhere, because guess what? Who really knows? Scientists don't know that for sure. All those scientists, all those doctors, they don't know what happens when we're dead, They don't know what happens. Nobody knows. It's the unknown. And that's what scares people, is the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people believe that when they die, they're going to go up to heaven and stuff like that, and they're going to be with Jesus, and they're gonna wear a crown and all this other stuff. Well, to me, I don't see any of that happening. I believe that we're going to continue to evolve on this earth. We're going to continue to die. Okay? What happens after we die is the unknown. But I believe that, and there's a reason why I believe it. It's because someone said to me one day, they go, it was a friend of mine who was going to die. He had cancer. And he looks at me in the eye and he goes, "Dude, I don't want to die." And I go, "No one wants to die." But I said to him, "But let me tell you something. Maybe this will help. It's very peaceful, and you're not going to feel a thing." And I said, it's like you're going to go to sleep like you do at night, and you're not going to wake up where you normally wake up. Now, where you wake up, I don't know where it's going to be. I don't believe that there's a hell. I believe that, as a matter of fact, there's so many reasons why I don't believe that there's a hell. Okay? And I don't believe that there's that kind of a punishment. I believe when we go on, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't tell you that there's going to be the pearly gates. We really don't know. Scientists can make all the scientific crap that they want, but it is theory. And and you and I, it sounds like you're a person that doesn't believe in theory either. You want fact. Am I right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, people are welcome to theories, and like I said, I don't take anything away from anybody that wants to think what they want to think. I mean, my particular view is that once we die, we won't even know that we're dead, because it'll be like just before you were born. You didn't know that you weren't not born. You just weren't. Your brain wasn't functioning. It wasn't working. And it's the same when we die. Your brain stops working, it stops functioning, and that's just it.
Yeah.
I mean, some people say that's depressing. I don't see it as depressing. I see the same peacefulness in that as what you see in what you think, because I'm like, life's tough, man.
No.
Yeah.
The thing about it is you're what you're saying is exactly right. I mean, if you really put some thought in what I said, that's all I'm asking anybody to do, is who's ever listening. It's like, what you're saying is not untrue. I mean, but you seriously, you don't. The thing about it is the thought process. Let's just say our minds. You say, well, we didn't know what we were thinking when we were conceived, but you don't know where you come from, other than your parents, and we don't know what's after death. We don't know. We don't know what is our next step in journey. I mean, other than personally, I'm going to be put in the oven, cooked, and and whatever happens. There's nothing we can do to control that. My friend who died of cancer, when I went to his funeral, everybody's always in a better place. And I was just like looking at the people, and I was like, yeah, he doesn't have to deal with bills. He doesn't have to deal with, the growing pains. Someday he'll be forgotten. All of us will be forgotten. What did you say? We'll cease to exist.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what you're leaving behind? You're leaving behind a legacy. Like I'm leaving behind a legacy with these radio shows and all this other stuff. We all, matter of fact, check this out and tell me what you think about this. Maybe about 10 years ago, I was working for a company and we were doing storage sheds, and we were dumping people's pictures into dumpsters. And for some ungodly reason, you know what I did? I took the pictures and I put them in a separate box. And I tried to contact the people who own those pictures. And it was because those are people's memories.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, I mean, those are memories. Those are good memories. You have to have good memories. Can you imagine if you were to lose every picture that you ever had from your time when you were growing up? How you would feel if you lost everything?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, see, now, in your mind, there's a lot of people, like you said, I like the idea of what you said. You said you just don't push it on people, and you don't want people to push it on you, and that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to say is when you mentioned it, I was actually going to go another way tonight. But when you mentioned that, it said, I finally got the guy that I can balance out here. We don't know what happens when we die. It's an unknown. Scientists don't even know. We don't know what happens, how we got there. But if there is something after death, then so be it. That's our next journey in life. And who knows, in your next journey, you might be the next Stephen King. Who knows? But no, it's been really good having you. I mean, really seriously. So tell people how to get a hold of you, where to look for your book, and it was good to see that you're an avid Twitter. You like to tweet a lot, don't you?
Yep.
I think that's a good form.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook a lot. My website's timmiller.org, and we have on there you have the links to my Facebook, Twitter, all that cool stuff. All my books are on Amazon. And yeah, on Twitter, I'm at timmiller2011. So yeah, connect with me. Don't be afraid to message me. Say, hey, whatever. I like talking to fans and stuff. And, on my Facebook, I'm always posting. I have another admin. We post crazy horror pictures and cool stuff and things like that. Keep people entertained too, besides just book stuff.
Yeah, I still think you're a scary guy. I do. I think it's just amazing. I mean, I'm gonna do something. I am definitely. I want to get inside your head, so I'm gonna ask you to come back to the show about in 6 months.
Okay.
And I'm actually gonna read. I'm gonna read a couple of your books that we talked about tonight, because if I can get inside your head, then which I probably will never do, because you'd probably scare the shit out of me. But the thing about it is people like you who have that imagination, who are able to write a book, are incredible people in themselves. Because you can tell a story. You're the kind of guy that would sit around the campfire, and you could tell the real horror stories that scare the shit out of anybody, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I've always been the one that, no matter what we were doing, I usually took it a step too far, a couple steps too far. Yeah. Well, that's probably what you did too. And I seriously, how many people have you scared like that? Oh, I'm sure plenty.
You ever hear the story? I remember a story my cousin told me a long time ago. And you probably heard this. Probably every kid in their whole was. There was a girl, a babysitter, who was babysitting some kids. And she was sitting, she was actually, sitting there, and she kept hearing this dog. The dog would come up and she'd put her hand down, and the dog would lick her hand. And then it goes, I guess I don't want to get into it because it's like a long deal, where she does all this stuff, and all of a sudden she gets up and she goes into the parlor or something. She looks in the mirror, and written in blood was, people can lick hands too. I mean, that to me scared the hell out of me when someone told me that. So you're probably one of those guys that like to scare everybody. So again, hey, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll see everybody later. And seriously, you got to read this guy's books. And he definitely is a very talented person. I love having you on the show. Good relationship there. And so I'll see you next time, all right?
All right, well, thanks a lot. And thanks a lot for having me.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Yep.
You're listening to GHTR, Nationwide Podcast Radio, www.ghtalkradio.com.